All right, y'all. Ain't No Half Steppin' with Marcus J is live. We're back for the season premiere of our show, and it's a big one. It's a very big one. I got my co-pilot in the studio. I'll introduce here momentarily. We have two outstanding interviews that we're going to bring you. Two dynamic brothers that I can't wait for you guys to hear from. Chris B. Williams, motivational speaker and positive energy coach, and Nate Jones, one of the few men that was a teammate of Tony Romo in Dallas and Tom Brady in New England. We're going to bring it to you, and we got our normal commentary on the things that we've seen in the world, and so we're going to bring you the flagship show of Legacy Internet Radio. Ain't No Half Steppin' with Marcus J, which is right now.
Yeah. It's about that time. It's about that time to get. Yeah.
Button your lip. Open your ears. Strap on your thinking cap. Socially conscious talk that's entertaining with a dash of humor and the top sports stories of the week. It's time for Ain't No Half Steppin' with Marcus J.
Sellers has Jordan. Jordan with 2 seconds to go. Puts it up and scores at the buzzer. Michael Jordan has won it for Chicago. Manning lobs it. Burris alone. Touchdown, New York.
Down goes Frazier. Down goes Frazier. Down goes Frazier. He hits one deep to right center. That ball is out of here. The Yankees win the pennant.
If they lying, then they must be half stepping. Ain't No Half Steppin' with Marcus J is live. We in the building. Y'all be down with us by calling us by phone at 804-402-2893. Be part of the flagship show of Legacy Internet Radio, live from the den of Legacy Internet Radio right here. Marcus J in the studio. I'm excited. We weren't here last week. We had a pre-tape show last week, and so I'm extra excited tonight because it's the first time in a couple of weeks that I've been able to sit in a chair and work the boards and interview people and have conversations and wild out and just do what it is that I do. And so that's why if you hear me sound just a little bit extra tonight, that's why. And so I'm definitely ready for you guys to be engrossed in the rousing interviews that we have, as well as the rousing discussions of the debauchery and craziness that is the United States media, and the conversations that we're going to have with regards to some nostalgic things that we're going to talk about here in the first segment or so. But I can't do it by myself. Well, I guess I can do it, but I don't really want to do it by myself. So I am going to introduce to y'all my co-pilot for the day, sitting across the table from me. Y'all hear from the sister every single second Monday of the month. She sits across from me and she says, "Hello, my name is Miss Tony."
How you doing?
What's up, y'all?
Hi, it's Monday.
It is Monday.
Yes.
It's like Mondays are like very Monday.
Yeah.
It's like very Monday today.
Yeah, but this has been a good Monday
Really?
because of the weather. Like, it reminds me of fall. Like, fall is my favorite season of the year, so I'm very excited that fall is on the way.
Yes, fall is definitely on the horizon, and I think that we would be not wise to take stock of how great this weather has been so far, because in a few weeks it's going to get unbearably cold, and some folks going to be in their feelings about that. You know, I happen to not be one of them just because I'm from Jersey City, New Jersey, and I'm used to it being cold. I like it when it's cold. I don't like being hot. It's easier to warm up than it is to cool off. That's just me.
Well, yeah, I mean, the thing is that...
And cold means football.
Of course. I mean, no matter how hot it is, like, you could be butt naked and you're still going to be hot.
Okay,
but at least when it's cold, you can put on layers, drink some cocoa or some tea, So I don't like the extremes either. Having lived in Florida for a couple of years, like I just can't take constant heat. I don't see how people live like that.
Right.
I have to have the distinct seasons because you need a break.
Yep.
So I'm excited.
Yeah, you said butt naked. Like anytime somebody said butt naked, you know what I mean? Naked.
Naked, N-E-C-K, you need naked.
Naked with like 5 Ks in there. Naked. Whatnot. Ask that Marcus J already up in here acting a little bit silly and whatnot. Couple things. There's some stories that I want to get to before we get to our guests who I mentioned to you earlier on. Of course, coming up later on in the show, we're going to be joined by Chris B. Williams, who's the motivational speaker. He's a mentor, positive energy coach. He's going to be joining us later on in the show. As well as our brother Nate Jones, who played 8 years in the National Football League, most notably for the Dallas Cowboys, who drafted him, and the New England Patriots. He played in the Super Bowl against the Giants in 2011. That was his final team. So he has the distinction of being teammates with both Tony Romo and Tom Brady. So definitely going to have some interesting conversation with both of them. And I may even see if I can get them to comment on some of the stuff that you and I are going to talk about here tonight, Tony. But first thing I want to kind of get into is the anniversaries. There were 2 anniversaries that have come up in the last couple of days, and I think that we would be remiss if we did not speak on them. People our age, late 30s, early 40s, are very, very familiar with the events of September 13th, 1996. September 13, 1996 was the day that Tupac Amaru Shakur succumbed to the injuries sustained in the shooting in Las Vegas that happened about a week earlier. Tupac was somebody who had a lot of influence on the hip-hop generation 19 years even after his death, and certainly during the probably about 5 years that he had in our consciousness. And so I just want to take a minute and kind of talk about him, because every year I do this. Every year my opinion is the same, but then it's slightly different because I have a little bit more perspective that I can apply to it. And I certainly would like to apply some of my thoughts that may have evolved since last year. But generally, I do kind of always feel the same. But just want to kind of get a couple of quick hits on Tupac Amaru Shakur. You up first, Tony. When you think of the last 19 years plus the 5 that he was in our consciousness, that time frame, which is Pac, that's about 24 years. He lived 25 in his life. It's crazy. What do you think?
Truly missed. He is my absolute favorite hip-hop artist of all time. And we've talked about this before, but, mainly for me because he was a poet and, read The Rose That Grew from Concrete, just absolutely beautiful. And, all of his music today, you still listen to it. It's like, man, like California, like everything, like every song, Dear Mama, you hear those songs and you still are moved as much today as you were back then when they were released. So he's definitely missed.
Yeah. I mean, I think one of the biggest things with the memory of Tupac that I always kind of deal with, not so much at the time, I was 22 when he died. I'm 41 now. But one of the biggest things that I deal with, particularly now as a grown man, is some of the same stuff that I dealt with when we talked about NWA and their movie, balancing the different Tupacs.
Right.
Because there's definitely multiple Tupacs. He's a Gemini just like me. Actually, Tupac and my older brother share the same birthday, June 16th. And so how do you, because you're very fond of him, obviously, you just said so. How do you balance the hit 'em up Tupac versus the Dear Mama Tupac? How do you personally?
I mean, I think people are so quick to judge, in terms of, especially when it comes to music, your loyalty. I think that he was a person just like everybody else. And, the fact that he was so dynamic is what set him apart from so many. A lot of people are in that one little box, and that's where they'll always stay because that's what they're limited to. But Tupac was just he had experienced so many things. He was very intelligent, well-read, articulate when he wanted to be. So I just think that people didn't really know how to take him, because he wasn't like, the basic 1, 2, 3 hip hop artist or rapper or whatever you want to call it, who rapped about certain things in a certain way all the time, and that's the way that they stayed. That's just like, people who, other hip hop artists who were called sellouts because they, kind of not really converted, but, they were able to transform their music so that it was appealing to the pop culture. So I don't think that whole, East Coast, West Coast, and, him changing his style up, like, that was Tupac, and he was phenomenal because he could do that and do it successfully.
I think that he had the power to... You're a mess. He had the power to pretty much do whatever it was he wanted to do with regards to the consciousness of the people who followed him. He was the kind of leader that I don't think that our generation has seen in our age group before or since, but for maybe somebody like Warren Ballentine, who would be the only other person I can think of in our general age group who had the kind of power to lead. Now, Warren obviously leads positively and always has. Tupac, not so much. But when you look at him and you look at some of the things that he did and some of the interviews that he gave, and you are able to rationalize the intellect that he had, the man was born of a Black Panther. Yep. He who ended up living in poverty and going through some of the lowest levels of society, and kind of brought himself out of all of that to become a social scholar, unlike many in his generation. Right. And a lot of people who were detractors of him only seem to focus on the negative songs, the spitting at the camera. I mean, those things infuriated me as well. But you got to also remember that when Malcolm X was released from prison, he was in his late 20s. He's 27. Tupac died at 25. Right. And so if we look at how Malcolm X evolved and the time that it took for him to evolve, when he died in February of 1965, he was 2-3 months away from his 40th birthday. Right. Tupac died at 25. Right. You know what I mean? And I think there was elements of greatness that was seen long before he even came in our consciousness. If you go on YouTube, you can find interviews that Pac did as a 17-year-old that would blow your mind. Right.
People weren't ready for him. That was it. And it wasn't expected because he was a rapper. Right. Like, what does he know about, all these political issues and the social issues that's going on in our community and injustices? What does he know about that? He's just supposed to make music, and that's it. Right. And he didn't do that. And a lot of people, like you said, he did things where you were like, what are you thinking? But he was a young man. Right. He was still human. And so many people forget that, all that money doesn't make your problems go away. It doesn't take away, the hurts, the things that you've experienced, like seeing your mother in that position or your father, being incarcerated. Right. That money doesn't make that stuff go away. So he dealt with it the way that he knew how. And, if he were here today, I know he would just be a phenomenal man. Yeah,
I know he would. And, I remember the day he died so very clearly. I was working for the YMCA at the time. And I remember one of my elders, who I'm still in contact with to this day, but she was an elder. And so she didn't get Tupac. She didn't get it. You know what I mean? He was just another kid or rapper or whatever that was shot to her, which unfortunately we were already desensitized way back in 1996. But the point is, she was the one that told me that he had passed. And so she's like, yeah, you heard your boy died. I'm like, what are you talking about? Your boy, what's his name? Tupac? What's his name? Tupac? I was like, Pac died. Because, we knew he was struggling, but we had heard positive things. And I remember how I felt that day, and I don't want to. I don't want to make this out to be more than it actually was. I mean, it wasn't a 1963 Kennedy moment. It wasn't like that. No. But, but a lot of people remember where they were in 1977 when Elvis took that long nap on the toilet. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? I remember where I was when Tupac took that long nap in the hospital. And so I always, every single year that I'm doing the show, I always want to make sure that on the show that is closest to his death date. And I could celebrate him on his birthday. I could do that. But I'd rather celebrate him at his death date for the sole purpose of acknowledging what it is that we lost. And it was promise unfulfilled. And I think that's the reason why I do it. So for those folks who say, why you celebrating death dates? You know, I celebrate May 11, 1981, which is when Bob Marley died. You know what I mean? That's celebrating in the sense of having a party, but it's when I want to reflect. I can reflect on February 6th, you know, which is when his real birthday is, but my reflection is more about the promise that was unfulfilled, and that's why I chose to do it here today. You know how Steppin with Marcus J. Live from the Den, Legacy Internet Radio. Tony, we've also had another anniversary that, and again, you know, I always feel silly saying anniversary, but another should I say, date on the calendar that we can look at that we're, in this case, told never forget, which is the events of September 11, 2001. A lot of different areas that we can go, and, you know, we'll take a few minutes to reflect upon it and, you know, just kind of see where it goes before we get out of this piece of the show. But with 9/11's commemoration being this past Friday, you know, we've had the weekend to kind of reflect upon our thoughts over the last 14 years. What's your thoughts on 14 years after America was attacked on American soil?
Wow. Well, I certainly remember, you know, the day that it happened. I remember where I was. I remember who I was with. And I just exactly what was going on, even though I was an adult, didn't really hit me for probably a good 2 weeks. You know, I remember watching it on TV. You know, I was at work, and, you know, people are crying, and, you know, you're just thinking, oh my gosh, these people are dying. But I don't think it really hit me like we were attacked by terrorists. And it really awakened in me like this sense of, you know, this is the land of the free, home of the brave, you know, and we look at other countries like, oh man, I would never want to live there. But we're just as vulnerable as anybody else. And then, you know, after, you know, some years after, you know, they're looking for bin Laden, yada, yada, yada. So many things come out and like, oh, well, they knew about this, you know, years before it happened, you know, but they didn't take steps necessary to prevent it or what have you. And so I definitely, you know, it was great to see how, you know, Americans kind of came together, and you saw everybody had little, you know, magnets on their cars for the first couple of years maybe. And now I think we've gotten just as comfortable and complacent as we were before.
The solidarity that I think a lot of us felt behind 9/11 is basically non-existent to this day. I think that we are more separated now in 2015 than I've personally seen in my lifetime. Now, maybe an older person may feel differently. Maybe a younger person might feel differently. But I would challenge anybody that's in our general age group to tell me another time, you know, where we've been further apart, just not so much just black and white. Obviously, that's what I mean, but even more so than that. I mean, straight, gay, you know what I mean, Christian, Muslim, you know, Muslim, you know, atheist, agnostic. Like, you can't have your own way of life without somebody else having a problem with it. Right. You know, and I think one of the things that was the legacy, the positive legacy that came behind the devastation that was 9/11 was that everybody was people first. Mm-hmm. Everybody realized that it was 21 or whatever it was jackasses that did what they did. You know, we ended up kind of feeling some kind of way about, you know, Muslim people, but that's another discussion. But I'm just saying, as Americans in this country, we realized that it was 20 people or whatever it was that hijacked them planes and did something devastating and crazy, and we came together. And as a New York sports fan, particularly the Yankees, I remember the first game back when President Bush came out onto the field. And I wasn't a fan of him as a president. I always liked him as a man. You know, you can argue with me and tell me I'm crazy all you want, but he owned the Rangers. He was a baseball fan. I would have loved to have a beer with the guy. But I remember not caring that he was the president that I didn't care for at the time. I remember thinking, this is the president of the country that I live in, and he's bold enough to walk onto an open field where anybody could get to him if they wanted to. They could have took him out, and he ain't care. He swagged his way to the mound and threw the first pitch, and he threw a strike. I just remember being just elated with pride to be in this country and as an American at the time. And I think that as a country, as a people, I think we dropped the ball.
Absolutely.
It's 14 years, which in the scheme of history, it's not a lot of time. But, you know, we dropped the ball, Tony, and, you know, that upsets me. It makes me really sad.
Yeah, because, you know, like you said, it kind of started some finger pointing at certain ethnic and religious groups. And then, again, we became more siloed within those groups. And, yeah, I mean, it's really sad. And it's like I knew this was going to happen, you know, when people were buying all those shirts and you saw everybody had stuff on their cars and their houses and the flags. And I was just like, I wonder how long this is going to last, because I know that it's not. You know, just that is just the arrogance of Americans that it sickens me, and other countries too. And, you know, it's like, who came to our rescue?
Ain't no half stepping with Marcus J. We got a caller on the line. Caller, you still with us? Caller, you still there? Looks like we lost our caller. Caller, if you're still with us, I saw your number, 623, I believe. Call us back. We'll get you right on the air. Tony, go ahead. Finish your point.
Oh, no, I was just saying, you know, that the arrogance that we as Americans have, you know, about, you know, our safety and security, and, you know, we try to run to the aid of others, but, you know, who came to help us in our time of need? And even if it's still other countries are looking at us, you know, just heckling us
right
from afar.
I tell you what makes me laugh about that, Tony, when you have certain political people who have personal issues with the president, the current president, President Obama. I think it's largely because he's black. And I also think it's largely because he's a Democrat, and Republicans are very aggressive about who they don't like, whereas the Democrats are usually pretty passive aggressive about who they don't like. So if he was a black Republican president, there would be some backlash, but I don't think that it would be quite the way it is today. And that's just, you know, that may sound crazy, but just kind of really think about what I just said, because the Democrats, they ain't going to defend him, I guess is what I'm saying, whereas the Republicans are different about how they defend their own.
Oh, absolutely. It's like the Mean Girls.
Yes.
Like, we might not necessarily like you, but we'll hang out with you.
Yep.
We won't let anybody else pick with you, but we'll talk about you behind your back.
There you go.
So,
that's kind of what I mean. And, you know, they talk about, his opponents talk about how the country is no more, you know, it's not safe, and how they don't like the deal that was just made with the Iranians, and, what is it? The Egyptian thing that they kept jumping on Hillary Clinton about, the where the diplomat ended up getting killed. I can't remember what it was called off the top of my head right now, but anyway, they jump on him about the lack of safeness of the American people now, while at the same time forgetting that it was under the last administration in a different political party, which was the only time that I can think of that America was attacked on American soil by foreigners, by people that ain't from here.
That's right.
You know, and it hasn't happened since. And you can sit here and tell me that it has something to do with the practices that came into place after that. But at the end of the day, the current president is the current president. And if he's going to take a lot of the brunt of criticism, then he needs to get a lot of the credit for some of the good things that he's done. I don't think anybody's complaining about $2 gas right now.
Of course they're not.
You know what I'm saying? And so,
195 today. I was excited about that.
Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. So, you know, the hypocrisy that you see with regards to all of this, I think, is very, very difficult for many of us astute observers of social consciousness for us to take. It's hard for me. It really is. It's hard for me because, you know, I'm a black man first. You know what I mean? I mean, I get the whole American thing and I get the whole people person thing, but I've been forced to be a black man first because of the circumstances of my residency in this country. If I choose to be anything other than a black man first, then I think I expose myself to the possibility that someone else will see me as a black man first and treat me as such.
Right.
if you understand what I'm
Oh,
not saying.
absolutely.
And so that's how I look at that. And I think our president does that as well. Am I happy with everything he does? Hell no. You know, I don't think we as black people are so monolithic to think that just because he's black, we're going to support everything he does. Those people are just as crazy as the people that hate everything he does. But, you know, kind of, you know, bringing it full circle with regards to the whole 9/11 thing, I just think that it's difficult when you look at how a lot of negative things came out of that with regards to how we view our own people, how travel is different now, and how we can spy on people's phones because we expect them to catch some dirty, nasty, terroristic Muslim person. You know, this is what they think, and obviously I don't think that, but that's the thought process. Saying something or doing something in media, so Tony and Marcus can't have a conversation, you know, on the telephone, or Tony can't talk to her favorite cousin who she hasn't seen, you know, in a long time on the telephone without fear of the government listening in. You know what I'm saying? So I think that is ultimately the negative legacy of September 11, 2001, and I think that we should be mindful of that going forward. Ain't no half stepping with Marcus J. Kind of keeping in line with regards to that. Tony, did you see or do you know who James Blake is? Did you see what happened to James Blake last week? James Blake is the former tennis player who was standing outside of a hotel in New York City on his way to the U.S. Open and there's surveillance video where you saw this happen. He's standing outside the hotel. I guess he's waiting for his car to come get him, and the dude just comes out of nowhere. And it's plain clothes. So at the time, he's probably thinking, what the hell just happened here? He's probably not thinking police officer. Just think this guy just tackles him. Come to find out, someone had identified James Blake as a person that was a suspect in a identity fraud type of deal. The only problem is it's a dude that looks like James Blake. It's not actually James Blake. And the police, from my understanding, if someone's listening, call me 804-402-2893 and correct me. But from my understanding is one of the police officers that arrived later on the scene who didn't have physical contact with Mr. Blake was the one that actually apologized, not the one that actually tackled him down to the ground, put his knee in his back, and cuffed him and stuffed him, as they would say on the Dukes of Hazzard. What do you think about this?
I haven't seen the video, and I read about it briefly earlier. And yeah, I guess they thought he was some guy that was suspected of some crime. And isn't there something like a process they're supposed to go through? I mean, you just walk up to people and like.
Well, for the record, we're looking at it right now.
Okay, I'm watching it.
We're watching it right now, and
Really?
we're looking at the video now. Tony, you know, why don't you describe? Because I've seen it. Why don't you describe what you just saw?
His name is James Blake.
James
Blake is standing there, like standing by the little, what do you call it, the little cart that you take your luggage on. And this guy in like a polo and jeans comes running up and tackles him down to the ground. And James Blake is on his stomach. The guy appears to be, he's got his knee like in his buttocks / back, and has him in cuffs. There's people walking by pointing. I don't know what kind of audio there is. Did he say anything? But you know, it's not like he was accused of like some violent crime. Like, that guy just stole my purse, you know, and he literally like ran up and tackled him.
Right.
What the world?
Yeah. James Blake. I mean, we just watched the video, and for that, there is no apology that was given by the person who did the tackling, from my understanding. Now, there may have been an apology. I know that the chief of police has apologized, but I'm speaking to that guy right there. Now, I had a debate with a sister in social media recently, and you know, I haven't gotten permission from her to get into this. I didn't think that I would on the show, so I won't tell you who she is or anything like that. If you're on the Legacy Internet Radio fan page on Facebook, then you can see the conversation that she and I had back and forth. But the gist of it was that he was not basically, he didn't deserve an apology because this was basically police work that was being done. You know, they got the wrong guy, so be it. Now, this is a person who is a black female prosecuting attorney. I also know that she's well-versed in the law. She's a brilliant sister. You know, she has a lot of positive things that she's said and has done. So I don't want to make it seem like there's something wrong with her, because that's not where I'm going with this. We just disagree on this particular case. But I bring this up to say that as a prosecutor, she laid out an example of a guy who was not black, who was white, who was accused of something. The police came in and found that this guy was not guilty of what he was accused of. And she said, and let the dude go. And that was the end of it. But they had him in court. You know what I mean? Not only did they have him in court, but he was obviously arrested. He was probably taken away from his job or his family or anything like that. You know, and her kind of position on that was, you know, the system did what the system is supposed to do. I don't owe him an apology. And I disagree with that. I'd like to know what you think.
I mean, you know, of course, you know, you're supposed to be innocent until proven guilty. But I don't know if due process is the correct term that I'm using here. But again, I mean, there is certain, you know, protocol that they're supposed to follow. You don't just run up to somebody and tackle them, you know, to the ground and put handcuffs on them, especially with this type of, you know, the allegations that were against them for identity fraud. You know, again, if it was some sort of like violent physical crime and somebody said, you know, that's the guy right there, then maybe, yeah. But even still, you have to tell him what he's being arrested for. You know, did this guy even identify himself as a police officer?
Right.
Because my first thought is, most dudes I know, if somebody comes and tackles them, you know, they're going to defend themselves.
Right.
So, you know, like I said, there's no audio, I guess, that we can hear. But, and maybe legally they don't owe him an apology, but I would just think that, you know, as another human being, you would at least say, you know,
my bad.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
My bad, yo. Yeah. I agree. Ain't no half stepping with Marcus J. Live from the Den, Legacy Internet Radio. We're going to take our first break of the night. And when we come back, we're going to talk about this story out of North Carolina where these kids are facing basically some pretty serious jail time for sending pictures of themselves to each other. And we're going to talk about Kathy Davis in Kentucky, the woman who refused to issue marriage licenses to same-sex couples. Can't talk tonight. Sorry about that. And then, of course, later on, we're going to have our brother Chris B. Williams, who is a motivational speaker and positive energy coach. And we'll have our brother Nate Jones later on in the show. He played 8 years in the National Football League, and he's going to talk to us about Spygate. He's going to talk to us about Deflategate. And he's going to talk to us about what it's like for an NFL player once he leaves the league. Marcus J. Miss Tony. Ain't no half stepping with Marcus J. Live from the Den, Legacy Internet Radio. We'll be back in a few minutes. Y'all keep your head up.